This is The World According to Mark. I am your host, Mark Lieberman, and we are bringing you a wonderful show today from WPVM LP 103.7 in Asheville, North Carolina. And my two guests are here with me virtually, as everybody is doing these days. I have Brett Spivey, Long I, Spivey, and Claude Coleman. And I want to thank both of you for being on the show today.
Thank you for having us. Very good to be with you.
Yeah, very great.
Well, I'm excited because you're doing something really fun, really important, mixing music, entertainment, ultimately food with history, Black history, and hopefully future of Asheville that you're tied into. You operate jointly a place in Asheville called SoundSpace. And why don't we start out by you, both of you, telling us what is SoundSpace?
SoundSpace is a musical hub of creativity to bring the creatives in. So, it's a crossroads for a lot of different artists here. And it's almost it's our baby. This has been something going on for about 5 years now to get it to this point. And it came out of a very selfish reason. Both Claude and myself needed a place to rehearse. And we said, if we're going to do this, might as well open it up for everyone else, right? So, yeah, that's SoundSpace. SoundSpace is it's kind of a double meaning, sound for making sound in a space, and also a very, very cool place to come where you feel safe, a sound space. So yeah.
Okay, so you gave away the punchline. Both of you are musicians. Yeah. So Claude, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and why this was important to you, and then both of you tell us how you two hooked up with one another.
Okay, SoundSpace at Rabbits, that's the full business name of the business. We're incorporating and paying homage to the previous business and property that was there when we acquired it.
And we're going to talk about that, but I first want to recognize Elijah, who we just heard in the background.
Yeah, Elijah is bumping and grinding and playing all over the place. He's got a bunch of new tools this week. You hear a lot of really happy squeals and high-pitched, whistles and so forth. But yes, my name's Claude. I'm a musician. I've been playing music for about 40 years. I've been a professional musician for about 25, 30 of those 40 years or so. SoundSpace at Rabbits at its core is a music practice space facility. That's really its core business purpose, as it were. That was the mission that connected Brett and I together, because Asheville didn't have one at the time, and it was a serious impediment on my workflow as a musician, all the production work I do, all the groups I play with. We always were having this hardest time to find a place to rehearse in Asheville, which is a super thriving, very robust music community, one of the biggest growing music communities in America, as it turns out. A community that actually also is responsible for nearly half of the product output in dollars in the city, in tourism dollars. It's music, and all of those sort of peripheral related industries and businesses around music and tourism. It plays a very, very big part in Asheville, but for some reason there was nothing like this in Asheville, where in every other city in America, there's 2 to 5 of these types of facilities. They're really important resources for groups to rehearse. They help feed like music scenes in a lot of different cities in America. And they're just a commonplace sort of fixture as a resource everywhere. But in Asheville, there was none. So when I moved to Asheville about 9 years ago, I was doing some work for Brett. He asked me to record on some tracks of his. And as it is and was, and probably still is quite a bit, the studio we were rehearsing in was in just whatever available space in a warehouse. Didn't have a bathroom, didn't have air conditioning, and we were on the rooftop peeing into spackle buckets. And we had a conversation just
You guys weren't in summer camp. You're not describing summer camp.
No.
Describing a rehearsal space. Okay, go ahead.
Musicianship is just a hard road. I mean, it's just the way it goes. You know, you pay your dues until the grave, pretty much. So I don't know. Yeah, we were on the rooftop peeing in a spackle buckle, kind of trying to we're wondering aloud and trying to figure out why no one had been crazy enough really to kind of attempt to create something like this for Asheville. And, you know, sure enough, as we got into it, we can talk about later, we found out probably what those, reasons had to do with why no one probably tried to take this on earlier. There have been a few attempts at it, and actually right now there's 2 other businesses that offer rehearsal space, just not like ours exactly, which has several rooms at once. And then there's the relationship with the Soul Food Kitchen that we're going to include later in the year. So anyway, Brett and I had this conversation about, he's correct. It was almost 5 years ago at this point. And so we decided to kind of find a property to create this resource for the music community. And that was the easy part, the creating of the idea, that's always the easy part, just like the idea, and then it took us a long time to find a property in Asheville because there's quite a boom, as you well may know, and anyone else who is eyeing property in Asheville well knows that Asheville is going through an incredible and just an incessant, just untouchable real estate explosion, and it still is. And so for us to find a property, we had to court a lot of property owners that were sitting on these gold mines, even though there were these bombed out shells of properties that we would have had to pour so much money in just to make habitable, and then sort of build out our business and create the spaces that we were trying to do. So it was really difficult for us to find a property. We were kind of strung along on a bunch of different properties. We would lose them over and over and over. This happened for like 2 years or something. We find a property. Oh, this sounds really great. It's a practice space. That's great. Sounds great. We're not quite sure. Sounds like a niche industry. Whatever. We love the concept. We see the market demand. That sounds great. And then they would just drop us at the last minute. There's a chocolate spa that needs a place. Oh, there's a third location brewery that needs a place.
Or they would quadruple the square footage on us.
Or they would, the quadruple the square foot rates on us because they were sitting down in gold mines. So this was a process that went on for nearly 2 years, just about. And then we found Rabbits Motel, and a real estate agent brought us to Rabbits, positioned directly in the medical corridor of Asheville, across from Mission Hospital, the largest employer of Asheville City, in the heart of law firms and other medical businesses. And Brett and I, idealistic and green and young to the whole idea of brick and mortar businesses as we were, went and shuffled along, and I had a look at the property, and I thought it was great. We had this idea of rehabbing motels into rehearsal spaces because of just the way the rooms are situated. The ground level is really easy for loading in and out. It's really functional for the purpose of a rehearsal studio facility. So we were kind of eyeing motels, and that's why our realtor brought us around. So she showed us this property, and I didn't think we had any chance in it. We have no capital. Brett and I are just, again, idealistic kind of.
We're musicians.
I was going to say that sort of answers it all.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a given. We have inherently no experience in this at all, and we certainly don't have anything up to what our competitors had. And actually, Rabbits Motel had 2 offers, cash offers, on their desk, sitting on their laps. And so we came to look at it. Our real estate agent walked us through. I thought it was fabulous. I told her we didn't have any chance at all on getting this property, but just tell the owners that we love it. And then our agent really implored me to look up the history of this place, which I had no idea of, because a lot of people in Asheville are unaware of this early Black Asheville history, which was just filled with prosperity and businesses and just all this amazing generational wealth that was cut off and systematically cut off, which is a whole other conversation I'm sure we'll lead into. But I was unaware of all this history, and so I did that very night. I went down, no pun intended, the rabbit hole, and I just spent all night long up until 4 o'clock in the morning just researching all this incredible community history that was surrounding our business. our business was owned by a Black family. It was owned by the same Black family for 55 years. It was adjacent to drive-in, which were owned by Blacks. It was adjacent to ballrooms that were owned by Blacks, and just on and on. There was a strip and a circuit of venues and juke joints and hotels and
Funeral homes. Yeah.
right. And
Yeah.
so as I was doing all that research that night, it just really just the realization of what we had to do and the mission of what we had to do really just like filled my head and my mind and my spirit. I had it all in my mind that we wanted to save this place, and we kind of wanted to restore it and create like a landmark of it, like a cultural place of pride that everyone can connect to this history that people are unaware of. And so the next day I wrote this letter to our realtor. It was her recommendation for me to write a letter to the owners because I didn't think we had any chance. Again, they had 2 cash offers. Brett and I are musicians, so we're inherently handicapped.
You had all those royalties coming in.
Yeah,
I don't understand
right.
why that would have been a problem.
But, that's a whole other conversation. But my life could be like a behind the music. VH1 behind the music. 2001 took a hard turn for Claude Coleman. It's like obligatory sort of period of loss and damage or whatever. But yeah, we weren't seeing on a whole lot of capital, but I did that. I wrote a letter to the owners, and I explained to her what we wanted to create with the property and the business and how we wanted to salvage all of that intention and all of that history and reconnect everyone to it and bring it up to the narrative of today in Asheville. And apparently they loved it. I don't know if exactly the letter really, really specifically had anything to do with us getting the property, although they put us ahead of the.
It did.
So if it did or if it didn't, I haven't confirmed that yet. I've been.
Yeah, best to just leave that alone.
But even if it didn't, what it was like a prayer. It was
karma.
It was karma, and I
serendipitous for sure.
I wrote our intentions and I explained them in detail, and I think that had to have something to do with it. And then they loved what I proposed to them. They accepted our offer. They put us under contract ahead of the 2 cash offers, and that's how we were able to acquire Rabbits. And so we folded their name into our name and SoundSpace Rabbits, and that's how the whole project began.
Sounds great. Well, let me pause for a moment and give Brett an opportunity to give us his view of things. I guess to sum up what you said, you literally fell into the rabbit hole. You were looking for property. You had no idea initially of the historic significance, which I do want to talk about. And what you're doing has tremendous potential, obviously, to incorporate the history of where you're at, to incorporate the history of Asheville music, specifically and including Black-centric music, if that's even a right term. And you're a drummer. I want to mention that you are a drummer, correct? You drum.
I'm a songwriter and a guitar player and singer and.
Yeah, Claude's got a really great band called Mandala outside of what he does with Ween. And he's a guitar player, right? He's amazing music. So we'll have to turn you on to some of that.
Okay. Well, so Brett, you were following along in step with Claude and his sizing up the real estate market in Asheville.
Yeah.
And you guys obviously had not considered, or maybe you abandoned the idea of renting space, which was a possibility. But
I mean, honestly, what's the point of that? I mean, the places that we were looking at, they were leasing the spots to us. And they would say, okay, we got this bombed out warehouse that has 16,000 square feet and it's $2.50 a square foot. When you did the math, it's like, okay, we're paying around probably $1,500 a month just for that. And then we bring them the floor plans and say, this is what we want to do to your property that has nothing in it. We want to put rehearsal studios in it. We want to put an HVAC system in there, which we don't get to take with us if they kick us out, or if we break a lease or something. They get everything we put into it. They come back with a counteroffer of saying, okay, well, instead of $2.50 50 cents a square foot, how about $16.50 $8.50 a square foot. So we're like, what? So yeah, so they would drag us along for like 6 or so weeks, and then they would drop that on us. And it was like, so that's when we were really looking more in the motel part of the aspects instead of warehouses. And we had gone and looked at another motel, which I'm not going to mention because that's still in our peripheral. We keep that one hush hush. But once, yeah, what we were thinking about that was that owning something that, you know, is going to be way better than leasing or renting something out, because we'll never own it.
Right.
You know, so then when Claude, you know, when Jessica Uji, our real estate broker, came to us with this, you know, Claude saw it before I did. He automatically was like, you got to go see this place. And then he started this, it was one email after the next with the history and this, and I wrote him a letter, and like, you know, we were just on a prayer and a dream at that point of even scoring the spot. And like Claude said, the vultures were hovering. They already had cash offers. So, but this place was meant for us. It was meant to be, you know.
Let me reintroduce my guest. That was Brett Spivey talking, and Claude Coleman Jr., who are musicians, real estate entrepreneurs, it would appear, business guys, with a great opportunity here to make something really significant in Asheville through their company SoundSpace. And you're listening to us through WPVM FM, WPVM LP 103.7, streaming on WPVMFM.org. So why don't we talk a little bit more about the space? And let me just say, in all candor, I've been to the space. I am trying to, you see that instrument back there? I'm trying to learn how to play that. And as a result of COVID, it looked like we need to get out of the house and get into a space. And so I've been to the place. Now I have to say, when I first drove up to the place, which is on McDowell
Street, yeah.
McDowell in Asheville, I thought I must be at the wrong place because there's a 2-story building that has a lot of broken glass and could use some work. I didn't know what that was. And then behind it, it looked very much like the type of motel that I would stay in when I was still in college and didn't have enough money to even pay for the days in. So I wasn't sure about it. But to be sure, I don't want to be a bad spokesman. The space is wonderful. It's magnificent. And it really goes a lot because of what you two guys put into it, and very accommodating. So I'm not allowed to plug a for-profit business, but I enjoy it very much. But let's talk about it. And I know you guys are very careful of not wanting to make any claims about the historic nature of the property that you won't be able, that you might not be able to back up. There is a true historic nature for, I guess, Rabbit Hole and how it was used in an early point in time in Asheville to house people, Black people, people of color, who otherwise were not welcome in the mainstay white-only establishments. So can you tell us a little bit about that? Because I think that's terribly interesting.
Yeah.
Sure.
Hi, Claude.
Yeah. Well, it opened in 1947. The owner built the property. He built the business. His name was Fred Simpson. He was a fast runner, so he was nicknamed Rabbits. So he called his business Rabbits Motel. In 1947, it was an $89,000 business upon opening. It was actually state-of-the-art and a bit affluent. It had a multicolored stone driveway, curbside service. It had an indoor fountain. The motel rooms were very lavishly furnished for the times. It was a very well-to-do establishment which again is like another signal to the prosperity that was all a part of that community. I mean, they were just rolling in it, and it was all for themselves. And so, because it was during segregation era, it catered to all of the Black travelers coming through Asheville. It catered to specifically um, the Negro Baseball League teams. It catered to a lot of Black sports stars at the time. Wendell Scott, the first NASCAR black NASCAR driver, was a regular there a bit. So for lodging, it provided lodging for a lot of Black travelers coming through Asheville along the Chitlin circuit, on the sports circuit. But the cafe actually drew in even a wider range of those travelers because the motel was, it was comfortable, but it wasn't fully accommodating for the big bands at the time and sort of the bigger artists. Those artists actually stayed down the road at a hotel called James Key's Reese Hotel, which was a 3-story ballroom. It had a top floor of hotel rooms and apartments, a middle floor of a massive ballroom, and they did concerts, and every single R&B artist played there during the times. And then the bottom level were a bunch of businesses there. That's on, I believe, Livingston, right before you start turning into River Arts there. So it catered to this really, really amazing circuit of traveling, entertainers and sports figures during the time. And interestingly enough, after segregation was a bit of a downfall of the business, which was common in a lot of different areas of the country because their clientele was so focused and they owned so much of it and was so dedicated. When segregation was ended, it sort of diversified it and diffused all of their customers kind of out and around and out and about. So that had something to do with the decline of the popularity with Rabbits, but it still operated after segregation era for many, many years, 55, nearly 60 years, through the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, the 80s. It was just known as a kick-ass home cooking soul food juke joint. It had a killer jukebox in the dining area, and it was open till I believe about 2002, right, Brett?
Yeah.
And so I have a lot of friends in Asheville that actually used to go to Rabbits quite a bit, and they loved it. It was like the only soul food kind of spot in town. It was definitely the only down home cooking spot in town. It was definitely the only spot you could go in and the cook would pour Schlitz into your plastic cup. So it was that kind of a spot, and very, very beloved and popular, amongst the locals.
So right now you have been operating for a few months as an area for rehearsing, I guess since late in 2020. And both of you have fairly elaborate plans of what you're going to do. And one of them involves another gentleman that I want to have you talk about. And that's Clarence Robinson, whose name sounds similar to the previous owner of Rabbit Hole, and I'm sure that's not a coincidence. So how about talking about him and the plans you have?
Yeah, Clarence. So one of the ideas and the concepts of restoring the property when we had found it was to do another soul food kitchen. We thought it would just be such a wonderful, awesome addition to Asheville. We could not only be like the first music rehearsal facility, but we can also be like right across the drive from Asheville's only soul food spot. So we thought it was a really awesome compliment and a real amazing model of a true model of diversity, which is like, as you were kind of alluding to in your opening words, which is just connecting people through food and music and history. These are just the bridges that connect human beings to each other, like, culturally and regardless of who, where you come from and so forth. So we really wanted to do another soul food kitchen. when we kind of decided and set forth to do that, Clarence was brought to us by a few folks on our team. A woman named Stephanie Tweedy, who works downtown, the block in Asheville, block off Biltmore, a lot of businesses there. And he grew up behind the property. He spent his whole life growing up there. He spent his whole life coming in and out of Rabbits. He had an aunt who was stabbed to death.
I want to reintroduce my guests on that note. Brett Spivey and Claude Coleman, who are on the entrepreneurs, the musicians, the creative force behind the South Side neighborhood project of SoundSpace, housed in what used to be the Rabbits Motel, which was a place for African-American travelers operating from the late 1940s until the turn of the 21st century. And just before the break, you said something, Claude, just to refresh your recollection, about a stabbing. So just to make sure we heard that right, could you please reintroduce that?
Sure. Yeah. So we were discussing our chef, who's going to be the cook of the Soul Food Kitchen, and we were explaining. I was trying to explain his history with Rabbits Motel. He grew up in the neighborhood behind Rabbits, and I believe he had worked in and out of the motel throughout his upbringing. But he's had several family members that were tied into the family that owned Rabbits. He's had a lot of family members, not a lot, but he had several that worked there. And he, by chance, also had an aunt who was stabbed to death. This aunt's name was Margaret Dixon. She was the aunt of Clarence Robinson's father. Clarence refers to almost everyone in his family as an aunt and an uncle. I think it's like a country thing, and it definitely throws you off. It's like my aunt. It's like, wow, that's aunt number 7,000. But I'll keep track here. But Margaret Dixon, unfortunately, yes, she was stabbed to death in the business of Rabbits Motel over a pack of cigarettes, I believe, and she died the next night. I think Clarence's father believes that the business is haunted with her spirit. He has a couple stories of being in there and the doors flying open when he was there, when he was present, and just a number of other odd occurrences. So it wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibilities, just for sure. So
that the ghost still resides in the shell of the building that is going to be repurposed and remodeled. Okay. So not that it's not already a cold case, but did they ever discover who the culprit was?
I don't think so. No, I don't know if that's known or not. All I know is that the woman did die. And oh wait, I'm looking at my notes right here. Let me backtrack on that, Mark. Sorry, I didn't prep myself before we picked things back up. But the woman's name, she was identified. Her name was Betty Telford. And Margaret Dixon was stabbed with a steak knife.
Ooh.
Wow. From that point on, plastic cutlery.
Mm.
Okay.
I'm not sure, or they didn't sell cigarettes.
All right. Well, let's use this as a jumping off point for the person who is going to be responsible again for the Soul Food Kitchen, which I know your plans earlier were to try to get the Soul Food Kitchen underway before the end of 2021. I don't know if that's still in the cards, but that may be. And you have another individual who you can introduce in absentia, who's going to be involved or in charge of the eatery, so to speak.
Yeah, that would be Chef Clarence Robinson, who I was just talking about. He's the nephew of the woman who was stabbed over a pack of cigarettes.
Okay, so he's gotten over that, so to speak.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he has. I'm sure the family, has a bit of drama going on. He has 9 kids himself, so let's see what happens with that family alone. We might have to make another business around the story. of that family, just kind of keep it all tied into him. But yeah, he's going to be the chef, doing the cooking, and we're really, really excited about that. Most people are more excited about the soul food kitchen aspect of our business than the other aspect. You know, the musician side, you know, it's sort of a niche sort of like, you know, kind of thing. So, but yeah, the second we mentioned the soul food and the fact that we're going to make it late night, everyone's eyes widen and like, did you say soul food? You know, so.
Well, you have to feed the musicians under any circumstances and also provide alcoholic beverages. But this restaurant, the restaurant went by a different name than the motel. It was called?
It just called the restaurant portion of it a cafe. So it was Rabbits Cafe.
Rabbits Cafe.
Yeah, it was Rabbits Motel and Cafe.
Okay. So as I understand it from the accounts I read, the food was, quote, amazing. And besides being a restaurant, and maybe either you or Brett can go into it, it was also known in the late 20th century, maybe even before, as a juke joint, Juke. We may have mentioned that before, as well as a restaurant. But let's talk about the food first. Let's get the food issue out there front and center. Does Asheville have any true soul food restaurants, to the best of your knowledge?
To the best of my knowledge, no. I believe there has been some in the past or so. They came and went. I don't know the stories and the histories behind those, but presently, no. There's nothing else really that kind of represents just like a good home cooking kind of, you know, cafe. Yeah. There is the Foundry Hotel, which is downtown. That's a bit high end. That's, you know, $30-$40 a plate and so forth. So that's catered to a pretty specific sort of clientele. This one is really just kind of about locals in the community, and you know, it's a little bit of an upgrade of the Greasy Spoon, I guess. You know.
So again, where the restaurant is going to be located, and where it was located, was in I guess they refer to it as geographically South Asheville, but that whole strip. Before and after, and before Mission Hospital started buying up all the real estate, was a haven for a lot of Black patronized and Black owned businesses. Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah. Southside Avenue, it was redistricted and cut off and re-engineered. So it used to be just this main line that was just full of drive-ins, other businesses, ballrooms, hotels. There was a funeral home there, a drugstore in that neighborhood. It was basically just, a really thriving business boulevard.
And from what I'm reading from one of the releases from SoundSpace, again, I don't think we mentioned this. Notable guests of the cafe were Richard Pryor, Wendell Scott, Willie Stargell, and others. So people, despite the fact that there might have been other choices, this particular joint, so to speak, was a place where a lot of artistic and a lot of very famous, at least in those communities, people hung out. And
the cafe seemed to be a bit of a dominant eatery for a lot of these travelers and the bands and a lot of touring industry that came through, that were funneling through Asheville. They always seemed to kind of end up at Rabbits for the food, apparently.
I mentioned it before we went on air that there's a phrase associated with the sort of the circuit of musicians referred to as the chitlin circuit, and chitlin itself is a food of some sort. Yeah,
chitlins were a dominant part of the Rabbits Cafe menu. She was sort of famous for her chitlins. She was really well known for them, and they're really labor intensive. I don't know if you're familiar with them at all. You know, I'm saying, all right, I don't know if I'm black enough for chitlins or something, but
I think that in my culture we have a logical equivalent of chitlins. It's called grievin, but basically what it is, it's the chicken skin that is then deep fried and onions and other stuff. Is that similar to chitlins, or am I off base?
Chitlins are more of an intestinal thing.
Okay.
They're like a lower intestine kind of. Yeah.
You're talking about before they go in or after they go in?
No, it's
Just
chitlins are it's pretty much what you put like a hot dog casing in or whatnot. A chitlin.
Okay.
Yeah. Or if you had haggis in Scotland, you know, it's the chitlin is layered with the lower intestine.
Okay, well, I'm sure it's appetizing, and hopefully you're bringing that back.
Yeah, if you love them, I mean, you live for them, and that's apparently what you did day and night. Was, like I said, they're very labor intensive, so there was always like a day before where she had to kind of clean them for like 8 hours, and then they were cooked and prepared and eaten. And she's really well known for chitlins or pig's feet. Her vegetables, she's told me personally, they're all fresh and farm produced, and there was nothing canned. So it was all just like very like delicious or traditional, straight off the stove from a caring, wonderful old mom, you know, cooking for all of these folks, and they loved it.
So the proprietor who's going to run things, what is his cooking background? And I know he also has another side of him as a comedian. But what is his experience? Where has he been, chef wise or restaurant wise?
Wow, yeah. For that, you'd really have to have him as a guest. He has like really.
I wish he was here with us today. So
history is extensive. I mean,
he's cleaning the chitlins presently.
For next year, you know.
Okay.
He's worked in and out of every kitchen and restaurant in town, but he mostly just has a catering business for himself. He's been a food competitor on television several times, and so he calls his brand of his cooking and his business cooking with comedy. He brings this really kind of lighthearted element of humor to everything he does, and it is kind of entertaining. He's definitely a funny guy, but his cooking is absolutely outstanding. He's very flavorful, and he calls himself the Flavor King, and he definitely lives up to the title. Sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
He does cooking with comedy.
Okay, so it sounds like it's going to be sort of like a cooking show, virtual reality show, where maybe it's sort of a different version of Benihana, which is the person that's doing the cooking is also joking about doing the cooking, and maybe throwing chitlins at people instead of Benihana shrimp. But I could be all wrong about that.
I think it may be like Tommy Davidson from in Living Color, when he would do the chef, you know, he'd totally like bark out at the patrons, you know, from the kitchen to the dining room. So yeah, I think that it's gonna be a great thing, man.
Yeah, I think it was developed as a stress reliever, probably. Just the position of being a cook is like, you know, that's a real I don't know how much glamour that really like has within the job itself. It seems very hard as a life, a lifestyle and a job position. A lot of sweat.
Well, it does sound like the Soul Food Kitchen is going to be more than just a place to go eat. It's going to be a fun atmosphere. It's going to be, and you'll probably, I'm guessing again, you're going to include some actual entertainment.
Yes.
Would that be groups? Could that be, you know, allowing some patrons to participate, open mics or anything like that? Or have you not got that far in your?
Yeah, totally, man. It's going to be totally history laden, man. It's going to be, we want everything from the community. We want to take the artists that want to come in, and we're wanting to open it to that. We want the freedom of expression, you know, and that's what Asheville is about right now, you know, for the artistic part. But we honestly want to bring them in and like learn this history. We're going to drop this on you, and we want to, you know, also open up the doors to, you know, for them to come and be creative, you know. So yeah, man, totally.
As well as a local fixture.
Yeah,
We definitely want, you know, the husband and wife to be there 7 days a week, you know, just with nothing better to do but, you know, kind of eat food and talk and eat food.
Right.
You play crossword puzzles and
have
it be sort of a second home for people, you know. That in my mind makes a really great place to be, an eatery, especially with that type of food and that type of culture. cultural relationship.
Well, the ethnicity of it will be different for Asheville, and at least in terms of recent times, but there is sort of a legacy concept of this. I think the breweries themselves, which, have expanded what they do, that it's beer and music, it's beer and concerts, it's a casual atmosphere. People go pick up food in one particular location and then bring it into the brewery. I guess really that's what you're doing in a modified way, although you're starting out with an indoor site. But it would, and you can comment on that, but it would also appear that you have larger plans that might include even an outdoor venue of some sort. And please talk about that, because I think our listeners would be very interested in what to expect.
Yeah, I mean, we're planning on it with this side as well, having a little side deck put in for live music, musicians, and yeah, that's totally, you're right, Mark. That's it, man. We're gonna cater to every possible aspect of the artists here in this town that need that, and so I'm looking forward to playing on that deck. So
Yeah, we're going to create a band shell that will hold events and hold concerts. A couple of programs we're kind of throwing around is a movie night, and featuring fun blaxploitation movies and movies from the 70s. So you can get your food and you can bring your family and you can sit outside on the band shell and have a good time. And yeah, you're right. The breweries, they've definitely have mastered the formula of the combination of the libation for the mom and dad, and the corn tossing for the kids, or the odd swing set here and there for the kids, just kind of making it really inclusive as a family sort of experience. So we definitely want to have that be a part of the restaurant, and we're definitely going to develop those sort of activities and events and things to hold there. Like I said, we just want it to be a fixture for the community and the locals, that they can stay there all day, every day if they really wanted to. And then, if while they're there, then they can see the program for the day and then catch a flick or catch a performer who they haven't heard before.
Right.
So all of these things that you're talking about doing add a level of complexity. They also are potential income generators. But do you guys envision that you're going to need somebody to work through some of the marketing aspects and some of the event planning concepts to make this work? And what kind of help you think you're going to need to really sort of build this out? I mean, obviously you're still in the stage now of just working with the real estate, with the project itself, but where are you at in terms of your planning for the launch of these ancillary entertainment concepts?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what they are, ancillary. And the services we're going to be developing are ancillary as well. So, where we're at right now, we're really just sort of developing and bringing the financing to be able to create those teams and create our structure and management, so that we can execute all this stuff and like make all this stuff fly and happen in real life. Because right now on paper, they're really beautiful concepts, and it's fun to talk about them and share, and we're doing a lot of publicity for them, and it's really great. It's wonderful to have all this community support in our sale. But yeah, we have to realize them all. And right now it's about kind of bringing in the financing. We're still kind of a little bit in Shark Tank mode. If you can imagine that, I go from the stages of, Ween, and then come here and on a sports jacket and, sharpen my pitch presentation and, make my ROIs make sense, and, do my market research and everything. But we're going to pull it together, and I think we have some really, really strong prospects, and our outlook is really great to do that. But that's where we're at. A little bit more time of bringing in the financing.
Well, you have a marketing person. I don't know if you want to share her name, who's helping with a lot of your pre-opening sort of marketing to the media. How important is that in terms of your forward planning?
It's about as important as creating the studios for people to use. It's as important as owning the whole business. I mean, it would be pointless to own any of this or try to do any of this without a marketer.
Right.
Uh, I think in business, you know, the idea of building it, they will come is sort of, you know, falsehood. You have to find everyone and connect to people and let them know that you've built it. And that's sort of where we are. And it really is absolutely tantamount to everything. I mean, and so with this round of financing and our work, we're really kind of trying to plug in a lot of resources into that. And we're going to bring in a few marketers. It's not just going to be one or two, or, you know, because there's just so many dimensions to what we're doing. There's so many aspects of things that we're trying to connect people to. I mean, like the sports history alone, we could just bring in someone to kind of work the marketing with that. But we're bringing in a few different marketers and a few different publicists. Right now, we've got, as you mentioned, a single publicist, and she's helped us with our launch, and she's been absolutely outstanding. Danielle Dror from Victory Lap Media, who is also the publicist for the Citizen Vinyl Project, which is Asheville's first vinyl pressing plant, which actually is one of the Southeast's only vinyl pressing plant. And we've aligned ourselves with a few of those team members, and they've been just so strong and a perfect fit for us. With a lot of the similar sort of parallels of the history. They have a historic building that they're renovating and creating new spaces and within those old spaces. So she's done fantastic work with us. We're just getting so much great publicity, but that's not the end of it. And then we just have to kind of keep pushing. And then with the amount of publicity that she's doing, we have to sort of, you know, go in the areas. We have to go into these communities and go into these industries and really connect to everyone and anyone to kind of, like, you know, spread the story. And it's a lot of work. And we started strong, and we've actually slowed up a little bit. And, you know, for the last week or so, sure enough, our business has kind of tapered off a little bit, even though we had the strongest month for us that we've had since opening.
And the business we're talking about it and the revenue we're talking about is that which you get from people like me, but basically other folks that are renting out the studios, the rehearsal space. That's really the only source of revenue to this point.
Well, we have a long-term lease room, which is leased, so that's our secondary sort of revenue stream.
Okay.
But yeah, I am talking about, you know, primarily just the bookings and people booking rooms and the sales from that. Yeah. And again, like our month, you know, we're doing really great. I mean, it's so encouraging to see the growth with everything being as deflated and sort of suspended as it is.
Because of the pandemic, among other things.
Lockdowns, and there's barely a live music industry. Everything's starting to reopen now. But even still, the demand, you know, to have a space to work and practice, and just from the inherent nature of musicianship, I mean, it requires a constant sort of need to practice and rehearse to hone your craft and keep your skills up to level. And we always knew that, and we always felt that. But it's really great to be affirmed and seeing this growth when there's sort of been nothing happening, but sure enough, you know, day by day, everyone is getting more and more connected to what we've got and the resource. So we've been doing well, but we really do have to kind of keep pushing and keep connecting to people to let them know we're out there.
Right.
People are still, you know, we're on this 4-lane road that probably does, I don't know, 10,000 cars a day driving past us. And, you know, probably a good 60% of those people that still don't have any clue of what we've created. And although they know the history of that building and have been passing by it for 10 years.
They're waiting for the flashing neon sign. And I'm hoping that is part of your development plan.
So vacancy, no vacancy?
We shouldn't use the no vacancy sign, I know.
Any kind of a neon sign would do. You know, something I'm thinking like something like the Bates Motel would be okay for right now.
Right, yeah.
While you're still waiting for your prime tenant.
Yeah. And to your point, that's again like another thing that we're still sort of developing. Our signage is still lacking. I mean, we just, Mark, we just hobbled over the finish line with this project right now where we are, and we were happy to be hobbling over the finish line, and we're happy to just be open in any kind of capacity.
Yeah.
So like, on the first segment where we spoke, you mentioned you showing up there and seeing the bombed out building, but that's what we got right now. But if
Madison Cawthorn's sign was bigger than yours.
I'm going to be willing to guess he has a bit more in funding,
Right.
which is a whole other conversation, but he does. And even though they're trying to extricate him out of there, and
yeah, well, we'll let that one lie.
Yes, please.
Because who knows, if he's out of a job, he may be looking for his first new gig after he leaves Congress. But in any event, not to get too political here. So I read somewhere, and now I'm losing my note on it, of how big the music industry really is, not just in Asheville, but Western North Carolina. And maybe you can give some perspective on it. But one thing that struck me in what you said is there is pent up demand in terms of people who want to hear music, but there's a ton of pent up demand of a bunch of musicians that are walking around, and maybe they're standing on a street corner in Asheville strumming a guitar, but I'm guessing they're anxiously awaiting for places like what you're trying to develop to plant themselves to be part of that scene. But how big is the music scene here in Asheville and Western North Carolina, if you have some perspective on that?
Sure.
Huge.
Yeah, I mean, I'm well familiar with it at this point, just because I've have to be familiar to strap on my sports jacket and do my pitch presentation, and so I've had to be really on top of the market research. But the music industry in Asheville is enormous. Like, there's about 5,000 jobs. It accounts for about 30 to 40 million a year. It's about 45% of the total product output of the city, which is dollars, which is nearly half of the money being generated in the city. And then there's all those peripheral sort of businesses around the restaurants where they eat at, and the bars they drink at, and the hotels that are providing lodging for everything surrounding the music industry. But it's enormous, and for the size of Asheville, it pretty much designates us as one of the fastest growing music cities in America. It's a very dominant industry, which, again, was like a puzzle why something like this rehearsal facility just didn't exist. Of course,
that is a lot. That is astonishing. I mean, maybe someday when somebody says Nashville, somebody will correct them and say, no, Asheville. Music is Asheville, not Nashville.
We'll see. It's really funny. I mean, but in a way, as big and strong as it is, it's still sort of in the fetal stages of becoming what it will become, whatever it will become, or whatever it needs to be. Because I mean, there's still a lacking number of resources similar to ours, and I mean, in Austin, for instance, there's a music healthcare exchange specifically for musicians, and in New Orleans as well. I mean, in another like music dominated city. So I suppose like Asheville is sort of like on its way to maturity in that regard, but it's a very strong, impactful sort of industry that exists here. Yeah.
Could you give, without giving away any proprietary secrets, of course, could you give us some idea of what the build out is going to be initially for that building that I said looked bombed out? I apologize for that profusely, but that building, which you used to house the cafe, it looks like it's a 2-story, but maybe it's just a big 1-story. But what are you planning on, and how pricey is it going to go? Because if you make it into everything that you're talking about, like a restaurant, entertainment, museum type thing, I could envision that being a pretty expensive undertaking.
150 million.
Is that, well, wait a second. Remember, Is that a serious number?
No, I'm just saying, man. I mean, with just everything. I mean, you got to understand the people we're bringing into it. They want to get paid as well. So, yeah.
Our number we're throwing around is about $500,000, about 500,000.
So with that, okay, let's just say it's in that ballpark, and let's say you don't need it all at once. You are then seeking actual investors who are going to be passive investors, or people who have some other skin in the game, so to speak. Or again, I'm not asking you to just, let us know about who your sources are, and we're not offering to sell securities on this show, but what are we looking at?
I'm personally happy to talk about it. I mean, exactly the reason why these types of things are so difficult is just that, people are sort of, I don't know if they're secretive or guarded about it, but it's just, you have to do a lot of digging and find out the hard way what it really takes to create these things. Like, you have these lofty ideas, and it's like, geez, it's like, oh, when you get into the nuts and bolts of it. Yeah, I mean, $500,000 is actually a high number for us. Where we're at in terms of the overall project, but the funding of things, we can't really kind of just take on another bunch of loans, because if we already took on a bunch of loans to kind of complete the phase one and to get people like you in there using our studio spaces. So we have to finagle and be creative with a combination of grants, a combination of specialized equity funding,
Options, warrants, something where you don't have to give anybody real money.
Yeah,
we're totally open to contributions.
Okay.
Someone were to give us $500,000, we would probably be okay with that. That would probably be just fine. But yeah, Angel,
naming rights. Maybe Harris would chip in.
Yeah, it doesn't really flow off the tongue. Sounds
right.
Pirates, Rabbits, and Clarence Robinson's Cafe being on Reddit. There's about 6 business names at once. This is my first business, but I know that's not really a good model right there.
Right.
Bunch of 4 names in your business.
But it does sound to me, and we just got a little bit of time to wrap up here, is if, because of I don't use this word very often, the vibe of what you're putting out, and because there are so many businesses that are not in direct competition. I mean, you got the brewery, you got the vinyl company that's making the records, you've got the media stations. You should be able to get what you need to get done. So why don't you tell people how they can find out more about you, follow you, and support you and contribute?
Totally. Yeah, totally. It's SoundSpaceAVL.com. I don't see it as a competition, because we're not a brewery and we're not Citizen Vinyl. We are a hub for creativity. We're a hub for bringing the artistic folk together, and like let's all come together and do this, because we want to cater to the artist. Because when you go to the breweries, we take our art to the breweries, but who's giving back to us? We're giving back to us. So that's the thing, man. So it's AVL, SoundSpaceAVL.com. We're on Instagram, on Facebook. You can check us out there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, great having Brett Spivey and Claude Coleman on the show today. SoundSpace. We'll keep looking for news for you. Thank you very much for being on the show, both of you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Mark.